Oh, okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual program today, What Are You Reading? Where we're going to talk with different librarians at the Genesee District Library and see what they've been reading lately, what they recommend. If you're looking for a good book to read, you'll probably find some good ideas here. And if you are reading something at home and want to share what you're reading with us, feel free to leave a message in the comments and we can see it and we'll comment on it. And we're interested in what you're reading, and I think we're all very excited to share what we have been reading. Let's take a moment and we'll go around. We'll go around clockwise here and introduce ourselves. My name is Ryan. I am the Digital Services Librarian. And go ahead, Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and I am the branch librarian at Flushing.
Hi, I am Chris Heron, and I currently work at the Fenton branch as a senior librarian.
I'm Sherry, and I am the branch librarian at our Genesee Township Johnson branch.
All right. So we're going to talk about a few different books here. If you hear something that you like and you want to check out, you can visit our website, thegdl.org/virtual browsing. That's where we kind of have this virtual shelf of all sorts of different books separated into genre that are all recommendations from our librarians. So if you're looking for something to read, you can go there and you can click on the book. It'll take you to our card catalog and you can borrow that item. At the bottom of the page, there's a list of all the books we're going to talk about today or try to get to today. So anything you see, if it sounds interesting to you, you can go there and you can find it and you can request it to check out. So with that, we'll see how many books we can get through in the next half hour or so and talk about. If you have questions about the books, please let us know in the comments too. Or if you enjoy a particular book that we're talking about, let us know that too. But Kristen, we'll keep going clockwise, I guess, around this little square clock. Do you want to start first with a book that you enjoyed and would recommend?
Sure. The one I would like to talk about first, it's called Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This book is the first book in what is going to be called the Between Earth and Sky trilogy. And the author said it's inspired by civilizations of the pre-Columbian Americas. And it's kind of has like celestial prophecies, political intrigue, and forbidden magic in it. And basically it's like there's multiple characters in it, and each chapter pretty much is has a different point of view of different characters. And it kind of, each chapter goes back between about 3 or 4 different characters. And it starts with one of the characters who is a young man, and he has a destiny that he is supposed to fulfill. And it's kind of all surrounding that and all of the events that happen. It's really interesting, and it's probably the first book in a long time that I couldn't put down. I think I finished it in like 2 days. It's a really good book. I really recommend it if you like fantasy and science fiction.
Is there anything about it that makes it kind of unique or stand out that you haven't seen in a different book or something like that?
Yeah, so I think that the way the author bases it on like the pre-Columbian civilizations is really different. I don't think I've read anything that uses those civilizations as a basis and or inspiration. And so I think that really stands out. And yeah, I think that's, a lot of sci-fi I think has inspiration maybe based more on like current civilization or like future civilizations. And so I think it's interesting to have something that's more like based in the indigenous civilizations.
That seems interesting. I like that a lot. All right, let's move on then. Chris, what book do you want to talk about first?
The first book I want to talk about is interesting that Kristen said she read hers in 2 days, because I read this one in 2 days also. So it's before I get going, it is the They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. And I want to just say hello to any Lake Fenton High School students who might be out there watching, because this was their book club book that they were reading in December for their class. And I decided to tag along and read the book also. I wasn't super thrilled with the premise of they both die at the end. But I wanted to, read along because the kids were reading along. And I will say in chapter 2, when the author introduced the character Rufus, I was hooked. I couldn't put it down. Obviously, I read it in 2 days. So it's a pretty quick read. The characters are really well developed, both Mateo and Rufus. Throughout the whole book, the author also kind of interspersed these secondary characters, which is really kind of interesting. I've read on Goodreads that other people didn't like this technique, but I liked the technique because it kind of showed how, as these characters came into the storyline for the main characters, you could see what other people were doing. So it's kind of this whole YOLO effect, that when people do things that might kind of change the way their lives may go because they interacted with a person in a certain way. So I'm not going to give any spoilers about how the book ends because that would totally ruin it, but just read it if you have the opportunity because it's really a good book.
Andrew said that he's watching, so.
Oh, good. Well, hello,
At
my
least-
son. Glad he tuned in.
That sounds like an interesting premise too. So I like that. Is it? Yeah, I don't know. I guess you answered all the questions I was going to ask you. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's teen fiction, and let's see here. Yeah, I think I covered pretty much everything that I was going to say about it.
All right, awesome. Sherry, what is your first book you want to talk about then?
I want to talk about Even as We Breathe by Annette Clapsaddle. The author is an enrolled member of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indian. Their reservation is in North Carolina. It's about a young Cherokee boy who wants to escape the reservation during World War II. And he takes a job at an inn in Asheville, which the guests are currently diplomats that are being held as political prisoners. It's based on a true story. This inn actually exists, and this actually happened there. During the time, he, of course, gets treated pretty poorly by the diplomats, even his own family, for wanting to leave. He falls in love. He gets accused of a disappearance by a young Japanese daughter of one of the diplomats. It's just really touching, a little bit sad, but it really kind of warms your heart by the end.
Did you read this book in 2 days, like everyone else?
I did not read this book in 2 days, unfortunately. Sorry.
That's all right. All right. Does anyone else have any questions about any of these books that we've talked about so far then? No? All right. Well, let's go back to Kristen then, if you want to go in with your next book.
Okay. So I guess the next book would be Across the Green Grass Fields. It's by Shannon McGuire. This is part of the Wayward Children's series, and this is book number 6. They are novellas, and they're all kind of have the theme of like there's like really no right way to be a girl. So you can be any type of girl that you want to be. In this book, the main character is Reagan, and she is so first of all, each book has a doorway. So each person that is in this book goes through a doorway, and each time they go through the doorway, they're always asked, "Are you sure?" And then whenever they go through the doorway, they go through into a different world. And in this world that Reagan goes through, she is in a world full of horses because she just loves horses. And in this world, she ends up living with a herd of centaurs. And And then she also meets kelpies and other magical equines. And it's just such an interesting book. All of them are really interesting. I actually really loved every single one of these books in the series. And I don't know, they're just something, it's just such a nice fantasy magical series. And it just makes you, I don't know, kind of just makes you smile. Like there's other books of the series are very dark. This one is not as dark, but it's just, I don't know. I just really like it. It's a really good series, and I do recommend it to pretty much everyone. I think that you would like at least one of them. If you maybe not this one, maybe not the first one, but I think if you stuck with it long enough, you'd probably like one out of the 6 of them.
Do you need to read them in order?
So probably the first few, yes. The 6th one is more of a standalone.
Okay. What's the first one called?
Oh, I think it is, oh my goodness. Of course, I can't remember. It's something a doorway.
I think it's Every Heart a Doorway.
I think you're right. Yes,
I read the first one, but I am not sure that's correct. But it sounds familiar.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, it's something doorway. So yeah. And then there's one of them's in an Absent Dream, and I know there's 2 books that are about the same characters, so you would want to read those books together. But there's only 2 that are about the same characters. There's a couple that have similar characters in common, so you'd want to read those ones together. But this book is completely standalone. You don't have to read the other ones to know what's going on, but it does help so that you kind of get the theme.
Awesome. All right, Chris, what do you have next for us?
So my next one comes from Netflix. I love how Netflix takes series, these little mini series that they create from books that have been written. And so we watched the Netflix series, and lo and behold, I had to go get the book. So it is Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Kahn. And what I absolutely loved about this book, and subsequently, hopefully, I'm going to read the follow-ups soon, is that it gives a nod to E.L. Konigsberg and her classic book From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. So if you ever read that book or you read E.L. Konigsberg, you should definitely read Dash and Lily. So anyway, this story takes place in New York City at Christmas time. And who doesn't want to travel to New York City at Christmas time? So great setting, great story, wonderful characters. Just read it.
Did the book live up to the show then? You enjoyed the book more than the show?
So because I watched the show first, I think, yes, I really liked how the book lived up to the show. And I believe, I don't know this for sure because I haven't read the second story is actually more of the 12 Days of Christmas. And I think they took the 2 books and actually made the whole series out of the 2 books. But I feel like they stayed true to the characters' nature and everything like that. So.
Awesome. All right. Sherry, what is next for you?
I have Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. It's the first book in a series, and the basic premise of the book is books that are unfinished by their authors reside in a library called the Library of the Unwritten. That library happens to be located in a neutral part of hell. And the librarian's job, besides the normal librarian duties, is to make sure no characters escape from their books. And of course, we wouldn't have a story if one didn't. And Claire, the librarian, heads out to find him. And things end badly, and there ends up sparking a war between heaven and hell. So you've got angels, you've got the Valkyrie. They travel through a lot of mythological areas during this war. It was just such a unique take on a fantasy book. The characters were great. The librarian, I mean, I think only she could get away with calling Lucifer Sir Pissy Pants. It was great.
All right. Good. We're moving along. We're covering a lot of ground here. Kristen, do you have another recommendation?
Yeah. So this time, I'm actually going to talk about a book that comes out next week. It's called The Project by Courtney Summers. As a librarian, sometimes we're lucky enough to be able to read books that haven't quite come out yet. So I was able to read this book in November. And in this book, it is about a cult. And the main character's sister has joined this cult, and she has not been able to contact her sister in this cult, and she wants to know what happened to her. And she knows something's happened, but she can't really prove it. And it's been 6 years since her sister's been in this cult. And so she works on this magazine, and she gets this opportunity to interview the head of the cult. And as this investigation happens, a lot of information comes out. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's a thriller and you need to read it. Courtney Summers is one of my most favorite authors. She's a teen fiction writer, and she writes thrillers, and they're excellent. And if you've never read one of her books, I highly recommend picking it up. Sadie is a great one. I mean, just all of her books are excellent. And I think even adult readers would like her books. So if you've never read them, pick them up. Pick up this one next week or when our library gets it, and you'll thank me. But if you're interested in cults, and especially with like the Nexium cult and all that information that's been coming out, I think if you are at all interested in it, you'll really enjoy this one. Maybe not enjoy is not the right word, but you'll like it.
I think cults are always fascinating. They're always interesting. Yeah. I think with a lot of a dark tone to a lot of the books we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I tend to kind of gear towards that. We have a book club in Flushing, and it's now a virtual book club, and most of my members will tell you that I do kind of gear towards the darker books. So, but yeah.
Chris, do you have a lighter book or a more optimistic book to recommend?
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess I could go with, no, I don't. Last time we talked, Ryan, we were like, oh, these are all some heavy books we've been reading. But I suppose I could go with, gosh, no. The Story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, okay. A biography book for new readers. That's probably the lightest in my list. My other son gave this to me for Christmas because he knows what a huge fan I am of RBG, and it's written for the younger reader, of course, but I felt like it appeals to everyone because in this day and age, you sit down and you look at the Wikipedia or you just grab bits and pieces of information about people. And this little book does that, but in print. Gives a great overview of her life, pretty in-depth history. In fact, I actually learned something in this little book that I hadn't read in her other biography that I read. So that was kind of cool to see something different offered in a kid's book that isn't written in the adult book. I also feel like it just doesn't disappoint as a short biography to read.
That's interesting. All right. So yeah, I think that seems like it would be a lighter book, more optimistic. And that's me too.
It's definitely optimistic as it, talks about all that she did for equal rights. Just in general, kind of inspiration for young people to do what's right. So that's kind of the big message I took from it.
Great. All right, Sherry, what else do you have for us?
We wanted something light, so I'll go with How to Fail at Flirting. It's a romance. You judge a book by its cover. It's got a beautiful, colorful cover. Draw you right in. Naya, the main character, is a professor. She's focused on getting tenure after getting out of a horrific relationship. Her friends kind of dare her to get out and live life. So, of course, being kind of analytical, she makes a list. And she ends up meeting this kind of handsome, kind of nerdy guy in a bar. He helps her check some things off of her list. And it's very sweet. It's just kind of light, fluffy, quick read. I might have read this one in 2 days. So it's just kind of a fun one.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, it seems like a less serious subject matter just from the outset. So that's good. All right, Kristen, I think you have something else.
Sure. Well, I can't promise it's gonna be light, but another thriller. It's When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and this one is a main character. She is from Brooklyn, and she's born and raised there, but her neighborhood is going through gentrification, and it's not the same as it always was, and she's really frustrated by it. And so her and her neighbors are planning this block party, but all of a sudden her neighborhood something's going on. Her neighbors are disappearing, and all of these new neighbors are moving into their house, but they have something in common. And there's a revitalization for the community, but is it a good thing? And the question, this is my favorite paragraph here that I have to read. It's from the review. When does coincidence become conspiracy? And where do people go when gentrification pushes them out? So, not a light read, but it's really good. It's there's a lot of action. There's a lot of unexpected twists and turns, and I did not enjoy this book, but I really liked it, and it was a really fast read. But it's a really good thriller, so I recommend it.
I think that's kind of what Chris and I had talked about before too. Is I think it's a good way of putting it. I tend to like books that I don't enjoy them, but I still like them.
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy subject, especially I think with a lot of current events, and so I think it's relatable. Yeah.
You have a comment too. Liz says in the chat that she has never not loved a book Kristen has recommended to her. So
thank you, Liz.
They may be all kind of dark and heavy, but
yeah. I mean, I will say the Wayward Children series, there are some darker ones, but there are some lighter ones as well. So.
All right, Chris, what else do we have?
So I'm going to kind of use that as a segue into my next one, which is a nonfiction book. I hope it's okay to talk about nonfiction here.
Please do.
It's What Unites Us by Dan Rather. And as Kristen, mentioned about so much going on in our lives and in the news right now, this little book is really quite a gem. There's so much to digest in each chapter that I found I could only read, sometimes not even the whole chapter at a time, because it was just so much I wanted to kind of think about and reflect on in terms of, what makes a person a patriot. How should we look at the news? Should we consider it a be all end all type thing? If I were a teacher, I would make this recommended reading for my classroom because there's so much just excellent topics to talk about. for young people. And I'm a huge fan of Dan Rather now. If you'd asked me 20 years ago what I thought of Dan Rather, I would have said, oh, he's a stick in the mud. He shows a lot of humor. He has a lot of humor that he offers, and trying to deal with different, the different issues that we face daily.
All right. Sherry, what do you have?
I'm going to go back to Dark. I have His and Hers by Alice Feeney. It's a dark, twisty thriller with an ending you just won't see coming. Anna is a TV personality, and she's sent to cover a murder in her old hometown. She's really good at her job, but she's a bit of a mess personally. She also has a past relationship with the murder victim, as well as a past with the lead investigator, who also has some serious secrets. And this one I loved because every time you think you know who did it, you're wrong. And everyone I know who's read the book has said the same thing. They had no idea what was coming and was shocked. It would kind of be perfect, I think, for people who like The Silent Patient, because that one was also one that I never saw coming.
Excellent. All right. So we have a few minutes still. Do we want to go around one more time? Do we all have one more book, I think, at least to mention?
For sure.
And this one, I think, on Kristen's list, we had one left, but it was also on Sherry's list. So maybe you can comments on
Yay,
it.
I've been waiting for this one.
Go ahead, Kristen, if you want to introduce it.
Yeah, so my last one is Hench. It's by Natalie Zena Walshatz. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So I loved this book. I kind of happened upon it accidentally, and I'm so glad that I did. It is completely different from anything I've ever read before. So normally you get your superhero books and it's about the superhero. This time it's about the henchman, but in this case, the henchwoman. And she is a researcher, and she is working for this one villain, but then something happens and she kind of is let go from her job and ends up using her anger and her job skills to collate data, and kind of leads her into a new job, and ends up working for one of the worst villains on Earth. And it kind of ends up where she ends up saving the world in a weird way. So yeah, it's such a good book. I could not put this down. I think it took me longer than 2 days, but but it was really good. It's nothing that I expected, but I kind of liked the premise of it, so I checked it out as an ebook, and yeah, it's excellent. I recommend it to everybody, but a lot of people that are in my inner circle because of COVID don't read, so I know I recommended it to Liz.
Let's see what she thinks.
Yeah.
All right. You have anything you want to add to that, Sherry?
I don't normally read books about superheroes and villains. It's just not my thing. But I got an advanced review copy of it and thought, well, okay, I'll try it, at least the first chapter. And it kind of sucks you in, and it kind of makes you think about heroes and villains a little differently than you might normally think about them, which I really enjoyed because it was completely not what I expected. I think anyone who, even if you don't like superhero and villains normally, would really like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else do we have? What else do you have, Chris?
So the last book, I've mentioned my two sons, and so now I'm going to mention this last book, which was recommended to me from my daughter. It's called In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. And so it's kind of like a time travel story, but not really. So the main character she goes to sleep and she wakes up and it's 5 years into the future. She lives this one action-packed hour, and then by midnight she's back into her old life in 2020. And then she's aware of what has happened, and she's living her life kind of going, oh my gosh, what's happened? It sounds kind of crazy. And at first I was like, how is this author going to pull this off? But she did. You meet a lot of her characters, and she goes through all this kind of like heartbreak through the next 5 years as she's heading toward that point that she's already lived. And through the whole time, the reader's sitting there going, what's happening? What is really happening? By the end of the story, the only way I could describe it was just that I felt a deep sob in the very deepness of my soul. I don't know how to describe it any other way, but I gave that book 5 stars for sure.
Excellent. All right, Sherry, do you have a last book to end us with?
I do. Ice Twins by S.K. Tremaine. It's kind of a thriller, I guess. Angus and Sarah lost one of their twin daughters in an accident a year prior. But now the surviving twin is claiming to be Lydia, the daughter that was killed, and she's starting to act out. And what's more, the family's decided that for a change of pace, they're going to move to a deserted Scottish island. So, what could go wrong? And you find out that this family has a lot more secrets. It had a lot of twists and turns, and again, it had an ending that I just didn't see coming. Definitely a page turner.
All right. So I think we have a pretty good assortment of books here that I feel like anyone who is watching this, you should be able to find. I would say a few things, hopefully, that you would enjoy. You can get them all from the library, and you can find them, like I mentioned earlier, on our website at thegdl.org/virtual browsing. There's a page there. And again, lots of other books if you're looking to find something new to read. But also, feel free to give us a call at the libraries and let us know what you're looking for. We're always happy to help you find something to read. Any final comments before we go? Do you guys enjoy doing this? Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your recommendations with us.
Yeah, it's fun.
It was fun.
If you read one of these at home or have comments, or you're watching this at a later point, leave us a comment about what you think or what you're going to try. We would love to hear that. And we'll be back doing this again in the future next month. We'll talk about some other books. But thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day.
Thanks for having us, Ronnie.